Hey, welcome to this week's episode of The Green Room. We're so glad you came back and joined us. Hopefully you guys are continued to meet in your small groups and you've had some great discussion through video. Hopefully the restrictions will be lightening up pretty soon to where you guys can meet back together physically. We're getting very close. But this week, I want to kick it over to Pastor Brian. We got a special guest because today is actually Mother's Day. So Pastor Brian, do you want to...
For Mother's Day, you asked Pastor Brian to be...
Yeah, I was going to ask him all the mom questions today, but we were like, no, we need to bring in a mom expert. So...
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the roadmap to recover for Governor Hogan, because we've been meeting as a strategy team and exec team and talking through ramifications in the roadmap. And the first one is that we feel like in phase one, which may happen within the next 2 weeks, sometime in the next 2 weeks, we'll be able to give groups a thumbs up to say start meeting in your groups, preferably outdoors. That way you can even spread out a little bit more, but continuing to practice all of the CDC guidelines. I think that we'll be able to do that very, very soon, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah. Grab your quarantine.
Your quarantine. Did you steal that from Lencioni, or is that?
No, I've heard it a couple of times. And I was like, I really like that.
Well, so. I picked up my Corn 15, so I wish it was
like the freshman 15. You got
I wish it was only 15. So you're looking at the camera going, that's more like 20. That's right. And it has been. Hey, thank you, Meredith, for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
I'm so glad. I kind of sprung it on you, so I apologize. I really did think of it last night about 2 a.m., so I thought about calling you.
I'm glad you didn't.
But I thought, I would love to hear a perspective of a young mom from this message, because obviously as an old dad, I'm coming from a perspective of looking backwards. I've done a lot of Mother's Day messages that were centered around being, a great mom, or be a mom like Mary, or Hannah is the classic, when she prays at the temple, give me a son. And those are the classic, and I've done several, and they're great messages. But I thought this time I want to reflect. I just wanted to do a reflection message, and so I had like 12 lessons learned initially. I just kind of jotted down some stuff, thinking, what are the big ones? And of course, I had to condense that. And hopefully, it's condensed enough. But there's so much more I could have added. I'm just curious, from your thoughts, looking, as well, reflective, and then what you want to integrate into your mother. What would you have added to that? Lessons that your mom taught you?
My mom, one of the biggest things that she taught us as kids was just that our character mattered more than our accomplishments. And that's such a big thing when I look at my kids too, because, they take their first steps and you just think they're, amazing. And then my kid knows dinosaurs by name and he's a genius and all that, and
I'm pretty sure Morgan required that.
Yeah, that was required reading. But, it's just, it all comes down to, like, I can't take any credit for their accomplishments, but I can, work with them to develop their character. And that's something that she always, both of my parents really, but especially my mom, they were always proud of us. We never felt like, oh, they're not proud of me for doing well on my tests, but it was more like we were a good friend to someone who needed it, or, we showed integrity here. And those were the moments where they offered praise, and we really were valued in those moments. The other thing that she's teaching me as a mom, and this is so hard, and it's like I'm really bad at it, is that your kids aren't yours, and that they're from God and they're on loan. And she used to say that when we were growing up, and I would just sort of, shrug or whatever. Okay, Mom, whatever. We're your kids, but whatever, sure. But like now, oh my gosh, somebody tell me my kids aren't mine. And I'll be like, no, I made them. Yeah. They grew inside me, but they're from God, and, we were chosen specifically for these kids that we have, and it's just like relinquishing control and acknowledging that, God loves them even more than we do. And that's, it's impossible to even imagine, so.
I think looking back for me, what you just hit on, I did not truly understand, because you probably get this all the time from old people like me. People say, cherish the days, are so short, and people said that to us all the time. We're like, whatever, okay, because we're up all night, we can't get any sleep, that kid just threw up all around. I mean, and you're just thinking, I can't wait. You're thinking this feels like it's going to go on forever, because especially when the kids are small, it just feels like, man, this is. But truly, as I look back now, you recognize the incredibly short duration of that season. And even though, we say, 18 years or something, that's a long time. But you mentioned character formation, and what I have seen and learned more than anything in the parenting is how valuable are the first 5.
Oh, yeah.
How unbelievable, because often we let little ones get away because they're cute. We let them get away with stuff and say, well, they're just 2, or they're just, but the truth is, the strongest, and we know this from the study, the strongest character formation occurs in the first 5. Yeah. And really, if you don't get hyper-focused in that season on what am I going to teach? So how do you do that? How do you teach character formation when they're little, humanoids, right? How do I do that?
We're probably, Zach and I always have to check each other, because are we being too hard? Are our expectations too high for our kids right now? But I think that kids rise to the expectations that you set a lot of the time, and it's fun because I have a 3.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, and so the 1.5-year-old is big enough to cause problems now, whereas before there were no problems, and being a big brother was the best thing ever. So right now we're working really hard at teaching Wesley, how to share, and he's already a little master manipulator with his brother. I want the toy you have, and I don't want to get in trouble for taking it away from you. So I'm going to, offer you this and this and this, and then wait for you to get distracted by one of those things so I can take the thing that you wanted. Or he sees that Bo wants something, and he runs faster than Bo to get to it. And he didn't take it from Bo because Bo didn't have it yet. And so we're really, it's hard to address those heart issues with a 3-year-old. Yeah. So we're just using repetition and saying, look, you knew, and we know that you knew that you could take it from him. And so we're just trying, to be really consistent when we see it and stuff like that. But it's hard, and he, they're so sweet anyway. So
I love what you just said, because I think one of the number one parenting helps is it's not as important that you always do the right thing, because we're scared as parents. Am I doing this right? The more important than doing the right thing is doing the same thing. Consistency is the key.
Yep.
And you're not going to get everything right.
No.
But at the end of the day, your motive is right, because you don't want your kids to be terrible. So your motive is this. But I think a lot of parents struggle with questioning themselves.
Yeah.
And because they do, they're not consistent. And I think consistency is the most important thing. And I think what you just said is so important. And I just want to say, for just all the parents that just feel, maybe you're like me, and you've done your job, and you go, oh my gosh, I did so much wrong. So did I. Okay, so at the end of the day, please recognize this key point. You are responsible to your children, but not for your children. And what you're responsible to is to parent them. And that means you're going to focus on doing the best job that you can, because nobody's perfect, but being consistent, attempting to form that character inside of them, but recognizing they're on loan. they're these little creatures of selfishness from the womb, and that's called the sin nature. They're all born with it, and so we're doing the best job that we can to teach the right things, point the right direction, but you can't enforce their will. At the end of the day, they still make their own choices. So parents, stop the guilt trips. And so,
and don't take it
I've never met a
personally,
great parent that didn't have doubt, though.
Oh my gosh!
And we all suffer with that. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. I still do that as a parent, and my kids are older now. But I mean, you look back and you go, could we have done some things different? And you could always second guess yourself. But as long as you got an environment of love,
yeah,
You know, that's the main thing. Keep the main thing, and just you're in the arena and you're just figuring it out. You know, I love you guys. The other day had posted the picture of Wesley riding the bike, and you were talking about perseverance.
Yep.
And you know, one of the things I thought when I saw that is just how much that will pay off later in life. You know, what you're building in is
Yep.
what you said earlier is the character pieces. And you and Zach, man, you guys are killing it, you know. And so you're going to have those doubts and that sort of thing, but man, you're figuring it out. And that's,
Yeah,
It
every
looks
parent
different.
has doubts, and and every child is different. And that's the other thing
Oh,
is
yeah.
that, you know, we think we get it down, and we're like, okay, I'm starting to kill it on this parent thing. And then another one pops out, and you go, hey, none of this is working.
And the second one's the crazy one.
Oh, well, that, you
Always,
know,
yeah, so it's like-
I don't want to say that.
I'm speaking for myself.
well, I said to Liza the other day, you can read all these parenting books and they all
Yeah.
have great principles, but no kid fits perfectly in the mold.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
the people dynamic.
Yep.
And you're
Yeah.
having to figure a lot of this out on the fly.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out, okay, keep the principles, but the methods are going to be radically different
Yeah.
from kid to kid. You get one kid and you're thinking, man, I've kind of found the sweet spot, and then another one comes along and it's radically different, and they're all trying to find their path.
Yeah, we found out about 48 hours into Bo's life that like he was different than his brother, and it's just gone like more and more. So yeah, they're
Yeah.
crazy. It's fun.
It's cool. God really meant it when he said little masterpieces, you know, in
Yeah.
Ephesians 2:10, that God created these little masterpieces. They're all unique. They're all different. They're all incredibly different. And so it accentuates the need for parenting to focus on character formation, not necessary methodology, because that methodology, sometimes spanking, you know, is, and I believe in spanking. I'm sure I'll get arrested for that eventually, but I believe in spanking. But we also know that some kids are less responsive
Yeah.
to spanking. I also don't believe that spanking should be your go-to for everything. I think that's insanity. Spanking should be reserved for the battle of the wills. When the moment that they say, you know, I'm the boss of you, saying it to the parent, then it's like, no, you're not. You know, and you're about to find out you're not. But methodologies have to keep shifting
Yeah.
in each of them because of the uniqueness. You know, Tim, you've shared several times, you know, that your mother had a stronger role in, you know, raising you, and your grandmother as
Yeah.
well. And so those
Yeah.
powerful influences. What's something that you would say I learned from mom or grandmom?
Well, I would say the older I get, the wiser they become.
Definitely.
You mentioned that this morning as well. Faith definitely was a big factor from my grandmother. My mom, I realize, is just single mom raising me is just perseverance was definitely one of them. Trying to just, I know she always had my best interest. She was hard. Very hard on me, but I'm thankful for it. And, you know, even today, she'll look and say, you know, I really regret, you know, that I was so hard on you at times and everything. I was like, I don't think I'd be the person I am today
That's right.
if you weren't that way. And you know, it's funny when you look at that, because I think that is one of my affinities. I'm very much drawn to single moms because the single mom raised me. And she was both mom and dad. And I realize, especially in today's culture, there's a lot of moms out there doing that on their own, even more so than when I was brought up. And I just think of how much is stacked against them, and they're doing the best they can, and they need a lot of help and support along the way. And my heart just breaks for them. Thank God we're a church that welcomes them.
Yeah.
Amen. You know, I shared the story about, you know, my mom's work journey, but because of that journey, what was instilled in me, because I was very close to my mom, as she shared those frustrations and those tears, was to value women in the workplace and their role of they're doing double time, they're doing twice as much, and it's so hard on them. But it doesn't devalue the fact that they're still a mom getting it done. It was I thought of this in the shower, which is kind of goofball, but I thought about the Ginger Rogers Fred Astaire thing. You know, they used to say, what was it like to dance with the Fred Astaire? She said, are you kidding? I had to do everything he did except backwards and with heels. You know, and you're like, whoa, that means she's twice the dancer. And I think these working moms, just a shout out, you know, to these guys, and single moms that are, you know, killing it, but sacrificing and loving, you know, and doing all they can to raise these kids. So,
Yeah.
hey, you might have some stories of your own. Why don't you take a moment, pause this video, and with your group, talk about what primary thing did you learn from your mom, and then we'll continue the conversation. Okay?
Okay.
So what else, what's another thing that you learned from mom that maybe is helping you?
I think just her faith and how she modeled it was a huge thing. There's 5 of us, so it was, just chaos forever. But she woke up every morning at 5 and did her devotion. And I was an early riser as a kid, which, I'm so sorry, Mom. But I was an early riser, so I would always wake up and see the tail end of that, and she'd finish her Bible reading and then get ready for the day. And you know, she's just also always been the person where when you come to her with a problem, she says, okay, let's pray about it. And I think so many people, and I've been a Christian, you know, for many, many years, and I've grown up in church my whole life, but that's not always my first response is, yeah, let's stop right now and pray about it. And so I'm trying to, that always made Jesus very accessible, no matter where you were. So trying to show my kids that same accessibility, and that Jesus wants to be your best friend. You know, we can go to him with anything. There's nothing too small. And my mom just always modeled that remarkably well.
I think what you just picked up on is so valuable and important, because often, you know, we do a phenomenal job at Oak Ridge in our family ministry and our children's ministry. However, you know, at the end of the day, we're doing a phenomenal job and killing it, you know, pouring into these kids. But what they need are models at home as well. And the models flesh it out. What does it really, okay, now I know these stories from the Bible, and I know that song that was really cool, and I can do the motions. What does it look like to be a Christian? And, you know, whether you're mom or dad or an influencer, showing the next generation how to flesh out their faith could not be more crucial. And honestly, you don't need to be the super giant saint to show simplistic ways to live faith, to live out your faith. It's as simple as saying, hey, I don't know the answer to that, let's pray.
Yeah, I'm super thankful for the resources that Cheryl puts out on the Oak Ridge Kids page with ParentQ and stuff like that, because it's such an overwhelming idea that, like, you're responsible for, you know, training up your child in the way they should go and introducing them to Jesus. And you know, you're not responsible for their salvation, but there's such a huge role there that you have to play. And that's just the ultimate thing. It's like, who cares if he took his brother's toy if he doesn't meet Jesus? So, but ParentQ always puts out really, really easy step-by-step ways that you can, you know, approach questions. And if I ever have like if Wesley's asking a question about baptism, or right now he's really stuck on the Trinity, and I'm like, how on earth do I explain? He's like, because he knows about Jesus and he knows about the Holy Spirit and he knows about God, so he's talking about like, well, this is God and this is Jesus and this, and so it's like, okay, I don't know how to explain this without saying something wrong. So it's nice to have resources to know that you can email Cheryl or whomever and just get a response at how to handle that, because it's a team.
I love you said that, because the materials that we use today, and a lot of churches that we coach and mentor will come and say, what are you guys doing? In fact, I got a message last week from a senior pastor who said, this is true, Cheryl, that he said, what are you guys using, because y'all are crushing it You're crushing
Yeah.
it. So Cheryl, thank you for what you do.
Yes.
And all, not just Cheryl, our entire family ministry
Mhm.
in all of our areas. Thank you for doing that. We use Orange, and here's why I love what Orange does, is that they understand equipping in phases. And I absolutely love the fact that they're showing that it's just a phase. You know, in each of the sections, because you can get frustrated at any section of the parenting, growth strategy and get frustrated. Oh my gosh, they're never going to get this, or they're never going to, and realize it's just a phase.
Yep.
Okay, it's just a phase. And the materials for Orange actually use the phases of equipping parents at each stage. And I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
So thank you for providing that. But also solutions. Your mom, I know, is also put out the boundaries material for parenting
Yep.
and creating boundaries for kids. And that's available as well on the Solutions Facebook page. So there's tons of materials out there to help parents be equipped to be the very best that they can be.
Yeah. I would just say those that you mentioned earlier, the first 5 years, those are very important if you got young kids that capitalize on that time. A lot of times we'll get folks that come to Oak Ridge and maybe they have teenagers and it's like triage mode. Teens, you're just holding on. You know what I mean? They're very difficult years. However, our job is, and you guys both mentioned this, is we're successful when they're not ours, and we're trying to raise them to be productive human beings in society. And so holding on loosely there, but man, those years when they are starting to express that independence, and maybe if we didn't have some of those but I would say you hit on this as well, Brian. The community factor is huge. One of the things that when Liza and I first came to Oak Ridge, we did a study with another group of couples, Bringing Up Boys by James Dobson. And, just unpacking that and realizing other folks are going through what you guys are going through too. The isolation tends to make it think, what are we doing wrong? That's where that doubt seeps in, and it's like, man, is this just us? But it was so encouraging to hear other people.
It is.
It's kind of sick. But other people were having the same
That's right.
issues, and it's like, oh, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
It's
You
just
always
not us.
need somebody to point at and say, their kids are a lot worse.
Yeah. I share this in the small group arena when I'm sharing it with hosts, and I'm like, we did a connection event. We launched our first small group, and we did a connection event here at the church, and we were out in the lobby, and folks were coming up, and we filled our group up, and we were going home, and I looked at the roster, and I said to Liza, I said, this is never going to work. It literally was like 4 generations, everything from grandparents to empty nesters to the parents with teenagers, and we had young kids at the time, and I'm like, this is never going to work. Lo and behold, God knew what he was doing, because we did a relationship series, a couple series after that, and it was like so encouraging when we were just dumping, because that's where you unpack life in groups, you guys know that, is we were just dumping, and the grandparents just sat back and they just said, hold on, it'll get better. They had to pull you out of it to see the bigger picture. It'll be fine. Just stay the course, and we needed that. And if we didn't have that community, I mean, I don't know, how we would have gotten through that.
Well, this fall we're doing a series called "It's Just a Phase," and we're going to talk about parenting through every phase. And so we'll have a lot more to discuss about this. We're out of time for today, but man, it went by like that. Didn't it? I know that this is a great topic. I just want to again say thank you, moms, for all that you do out there. It makes a difference. You're making a difference. And for all of our wannabe moms or single moms, just our hats are off and our prayers to you. And then take some time in your group, talk a little bit about moms and how they impacted you, and what you can do to impact the next generation. And by the way, when we get back, we might even have a spot for you to impact the next generation in our family ministry, over in the students or in our children's, or even in our preschool. We would love for you to make an impact on the next generation, sharing your faith with the next gen. So until then, we'll see you next time. God bless.
See you guys.